Hello, friends. Welcome to Our Power is Within. I'm your host, HearthMath, aka Just Chaz, and I am on a mission to inspire people to take their power back and to help people to realize that each and every one of us has a healer within our own self. When we can create an environment that supports healing and we can get out of our own way, we are truly capable of healing in mind, body, and soul. Whether you have been following along this whole time, or if this is your first episode, thanks for being on this journey with me. I truly appreciate you. And if you do feel called to help me spread the message of empowerment, healing, and possibility, please consider leaving a review on the Apple Podcast or sharing your favorite episode on social media and tagging me at Our Power is Within. So this week's challenge is going to be a 60-second Be Here Now challenge, which is inspired by today's interview with Dr. Perry Nickelston from Stop Chasing Pain. So my challenge to you is every day set a goal to spend about 60 seconds at least one time each day being here now. What I mean by this is to be present to the moment that you are in, to notice. Can you feel your feet on the ground? Can you notice your breath as you breathe in and out? Can you hear sounds around you? What do you feel on your skin? Are there any smells? We are only talking about 60 seconds here. Just one time being totally present in the moment per day, at any point or any time during the day, whatever works for you. So if you're wondering how to remember to do this, a way to initially begin a habit like this is to set a timer on your phone for whatever time you want. And then every day when that timer goes off, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, just stop and check in with yourself, with your surroundings, and with your relationship to time and space, and make it fun. You never know what could really come from something like this. I know it sounds simple and it might be easy to dismiss, like, it's only 60 seconds. What good would come from that? But the truth is, I've said this before and I will say it again. It's the little things that we do every day, over and over again, day in and day out, that yield the big results. So just give it a try and let me know how it goes if you want. All right, you guys, today's episode is a long one and it is packed with awesomeness. So if you need to break it up into 2 listens and hit pause in the middle, no worries. If this is your first time to hear from or learn from Dr. Perry Nickelston, I just want to say you are welcome because he's honestly a rock star in the wellness community. I have followed him for so many years and I have admired his work on so many levels. As you will hear in this episode, he has this awesome ability of taking stuff that often comes across as serious and making it really fun, both fun to learn and fun to do. In my personal opinion, he is truly brilliant and he has so much to offer this world. He has already offered this world so much and he is constantly learning, growing, and expanding and helping his listeners and his people to expand their minds when it comes to the mind, body, soul, all of the above. All of the above. I truly believe that he is a mastermind when it comes to our body and understanding the mind body as a unit, and then the complexity of our systems and how all of our systems actually work together and influence one another. And then helping us to understand that this journey that we're all on is very much holistic and it also doesn't end. It's lifelong. It's until that last breath, as we've talked about many times on here. So with that said, I just want to say that I honestly think you guys are going to love him. Absolutely love him. I know I do. So make sure that your brain is ready to be a sponge. Sit back and enjoy the ride today. And you might want to grab a pen and paper and take notes on this one. Just saying. Okay, on that note, let's go ahead and welcome him to the show. I have Perry Nickelston with Stop Chasing Pain on the line today. Hi, Perry.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Like I already told you offline, I think this is going to be a really special treat for so many people listening today. So I'm really excited to get to introduce you to the listeners.
Oh, thank you. Well, I certainly hope so. I'll try to share a little bit of my brain, and maybe I'll help theirs too.
Awesome. Um, so what I was thinking, because I think that you will be a new name for many people listening, I was wondering if you would give a little brief intro on just, um, well, okay, so I'll just go ahead and say, I know that you started as a chiropractor. I've personally been following your work for years and years. And as a fitness coach, super into the body and mechanics and, a lot of the same principles that you used to focus on. It was very much body related and also brilliant because it was like, hey, if my left elbow hurts, it's probably not my left elbow that's causing the pain. But something I've learned through following you all these years is you've expanded so far beyond the sole focus of the body for healing now, and are even looking at the whole system, mind, body. You're looking at emotions, you're looking at brain, lymph, so many different facets, and beyond the just idea of physical pain, but even illness and dis-ease and beyond. So with that, maybe you could share a little bit about what led you to really transform and expand your horizons into a more holistic, all-encompassing approach.
Well, great question. And first of all, thank you very much for following me for the years. And yeah, I've definitely changed, honestly, over the course of the years that I've been doing this along this journey that you're forever on anyway, right? I always say it's the journey, not the destination. And, it's really funny, though. I don't even call myself a chiropractor anymore, even though that was my degree to practice in healthcare, because as soon as I say that term, everybody thinks they already know what I do. And I'm like, you're not going to be anywhere close to the stuff that I do anymore. So, yes, it's funny because I started studying and doing mostly with the body first, right? Like musculoskeletal things of, muscle, fascia, ligament, joint, musculoskeletal pain, and world of chiropractic. I mean, backs and spines are kind of our jam, right? But I slowly began to study other systems as I went along because I've always inherently known that there's more to the body than even just the spine. And we talked about the nervous system in a little bit of a different way, but it was really centered around spinal nerves and removing pressure from nerves. But I was always frustrated of why people would still have issues come back, and interventions would help them for a while, not just chiropractic, but all other interventions, but they would never really stick. So then it became a lifelong journey of looking into why that might be. And then I studied pain science and neuroscience and getting a lot into the brain because brain science and pain science have changed so much over the last decade. It's crazy how much they've been able to learn. But I really got into it more so with my own suffering and my own illness. And I've had standard musculoskeletal pain like knee, back, shoulder stuff most of my life because it's just part of being human, right? But then slowly over time, my brain started to go, honestly, with brain fog, fatigue, forgetfulness, a lot of inflammation in the brain, and slid into what's called polyautoimmunity, multiple autoimmune diseases. And my body just kind of went crazy on me. And I nearly died. And I had a mental breakdown and a physical breakdown at one point. And I was searching for answers for clients in the beginning, of course, but then now it was for my own, my own body. And that's what brought me to where I am today and talking about all the different systems of the body, not just the nervous system. Yeah, it's important, but it's not the only one that you've got. And you can't live without it, sure, but you can't live without the other ones either. They're just as important, but sometimes we like to just go after one thing. And when you have chronic pain or autoimmune disease, it's never one thing, ever. I always have this phrase that I teach people that no system in the body ever works by itself. It never works alone. And whenever you have an injury, you injure all of them, not just the one that it goes with your quote unquote label or your diagnosis. And when you want to heal, it's not just healing one of them, because you're only as strong and resilient in my world as that one system that is not at its optimal. It's got the most vulnerability to it. right? Because all the other ones have to step up and do more because of that vulnerable one, and eventually they're going to burn out. So you want to have optimal functioning of them all. And that's why we call this a body system working all together. And that's what Stop Chasing Pain was really born from. Of I got tired of just doing treatments to where somebody would come in and complain of pain or point to it, right? And that gets old really fast, because it's not very rewarding, because it's not that difficult, quite honestly. I mean, just point to where it hurts and do something to it. Right. But then you got to figure out, well, first of all, why in the world did you get it in the first place? And then why does it keep coming back? And why is it not going away, even though I'm doing all these wonderful therapies? And then that's where my mindset goes. It doesn't say stop treating pain. It says stop chasing it. You have to think bigger, think broader, stop thinking symptoms and look at systems. And then we don't do that in medicine. We look at symptoms and we try to change those, or more importantly, we try to stop them. And we figure if we stop them that we fix something. Not at all. Those two don't correlate with each other. Yeah. And that's pretty much what brought me to where I am right now. My own pain and suffering. I was able to bring myself back from the stuff that I've learned to do for myself. And I began to introduce that, using it with other people that are suffering as well.
Yeah, that's it's a similar story. I know, I walked in a similar path, being a health and fitness, trying to help everyone else, but then finding myself sick and being like, wait, but I'm doing all the things right. Or so I thought, and that's when I was like, it has to be bigger than this. And so that's what led me to stop focusing so much on just the body, the muscles, the skeletal system, and start assessing what's really going on inside. So for you, when you first started getting sick and noticing these symptoms, were you kind of at least shocked at first, thinking, oh, I'm somebody who takes such good care of myself, I do all these things, what's happening to me? Or was it instantly obvious? Or
sort of, but what happens to people over time is that a lot of times we pay attention to traumatic things that happen. You slip, you fall, you get hit, A equals B. But we slowly decline over time, and we take feeling awful as just normal. You set a new baseline of misery. That's called adaptation. I've always had headaches. I've always had stiffness. I've always had tightness. Or you get told by the current community that it's just part of getting older, which is complete hogwash. And so it's just it's the proverbial, boiling the frog in water really slow. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a great analogy. If you throw it in hot water, it jumps out. If you sit there, it gets warm, and, oh, this is nice and comfortable. And then the next thing you know, it's cooking. And that's what happens over time. And you just say, maybe it'll go away, or it's not that bad, or you have to change your lifestyle a little bit, things you can't do that you used to do. And the next thing you know, it's your normal. And then you start to seek care at that point when your suffering becomes too much, right? So it's a sliding scale most of the time with people. And, I'm a human being too. Even though I'm in the healthcare field, it doesn't mean I'm less vulnerable than somebody else, or, I get tired, I get afraid, I lose hope. Sometimes when you're in this field, you can become even more lost, honestly, because you're really your own best doctor. You can't be objective on yourself, I think. And it just got to a point where I knew that all of my things that I was trying to do to get well, even though they were helping for a little bit, they weren't making lasting changes. And I just got very frustrated. And I was thinking to myself, I think the human body is way more miraculous than that. I think that it's not a matter of, well, you just got to learn to live with it. I think that, no, I'm going to change and reframe my question. Because if the solution isn't working, maybe you're going after the wrong problem, right? So everybody's trying to change the solution up to the quote unquote pain problem. So I just changed up what the problem was. And for me, it was, well, maybe my body doesn't have what it needs to heal itself, right? There's certain components that it's like making a cake. You can't make a cake without cake mix. And if you're missing the cake mix, I don't care what ingredients you put in there, it's not going to come out right. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to basics, and you can't get any more fundamental and basic than if you want to make a cake, have the cake mix. And that's what I call basics and fundamentals, because I think that a lot of that is missing in healthcare, because we either assume that somebody's doing them, which they're usually not, or we just take them for granted, or we neglect them altogether. Like that, something as simple as hydration, for instance, is one of those. People go through all these different programs and crazy things to lose weight or, to help pain. And I ask them a simple question: how much water are you drinking? And the average person's first, they're not going to tell me the truth, but then they're going to probably say, oh, maybe a glass or two, if that. And then I say, how much are you drinking of anything else? Oh, about 500 quarts of coffee or drinks or whatever. I'm like, it doesn't matter what I give you. If you don't stop that, you're not going to get well. Hard stop, period. Something like that. So you need to check those fundamental boxes. I call them like a flight manifesto. Like if you want to take off in an airplane, they have to check and make sure the same things all the time before you fly. And that's what I do for people. And I got to tell you, 10 times out of 10, they're missing their wheels on the plane. I mean, it's just something that's not there, right? But it seems so easy. That's one of the reasons why we neglect it, right? Or we take it for granted. But one of the things that I learned when you get in the world of healthcare or fitness, or you're trying to recover for something for yourself or someone else, you have a tendency to learn a lot more, and you're in this little bubble and you think everybody in the world knows these things that you know, or they do the things that you do. And it's a big wake-up call when you realize that the majority of people don't know. And if they do know, they don't do.
Yeah, that's totally true. Yeah, that's really true and well said. And I really love your analogy. I don't know if this was your experience, but I always think of this journey kind of like an onion, and you're just constantly peeling back layers. So even when you're first like asking the right questions and going down this path of like finding things that are actually working and creating healing that's lasting, it's like all of a sudden you actually learn another layer and then another layer. And you're like, oh, there's this emotional component. Oh, there's this component. Like, and it's just this constant journey where you're just peeling back these layers to the essence.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a journey that never ends. And
yeah.
That's forever a student, honestly. And,
yeah.
We're discovering new things about ourselves every day as human beings, especially in times like these when the world's off its axis. There's a lot of change going on. And that's one of the things I've talked to people about, is that the only time you're ever really going to change is when there's suffering or difficulty. Because if you're comfortable, why in the world would you change anyway? I mean, if your brain is comfortable, it's going to say, I'm going to park here for a while. This is quite nice. And unless something spurs it to do so. And that is usually a pain, which gets you to do something. So my definition of pain is this: pain is a request for change, right? So when you have pain, you have to say to yourself, something needs to change here because I don't like this. And then a lot of times we ignore it or we try to suppress it. But it's in moments like this with pandemics that you can step back and reassess your body, your life, your whatever you're doing, and those types of things. So the onion, here's the thing, is that the path to mastery never ends. There's no such thing as a master.
No.
So there's always another layer to the onion. And that's scary for people. I mean, I saw a quote once, I forgot who said it, but nothing is more terrifying than the idea of unlimited possibilities. So if we think about that for a moment, right? Because it's the one thing that terrifies or stresses the brain out more than anything for a human being is uncertainty, not knowing.
Yep.
Right? And then possibilities can be that for people because it's too many options. And so not enough options will really stress you out. That's one of the biggest things because humans don't like it when you try to control them. And then another one is too many options. Then you just get anxiety and you shut down. So there's a pendulum that goes both ways, right? So you have this chaos at one end of the spectrum, and then you have comfort at the other, right? Or like order, I call it order and chaos. And you're not supposed to live on the end of both one of those, because if you have a lot of chaos, it's just too chaotic. If you have a lot of order, trust me, that's just as bad of chaos. So what you need to do is you need to have this pendulum be able to swing between both. That's what healing is. That's what pain is. And you should be chilling out in the middle where it just rocks a little bit, like a ball inside of a bowl, like that way. You don't want anything to be static. And what happens is that people can get stuck at either end of that, where it's just too much chaos. And then the other end is where they're seeking so much order that they stop living.
So true. That's a really good way to look at it. So when you're in your journey, well, your never-ending journey, when you're first sick and you're starting to figure out what works, what really was the catalyst for you? What did you find to be like the most effective? Because I know it's not one thing. It would be so great if we could just wrap it all up and say it's one thing that healed me. And as we know, it's probably a combination of many things and many layers of things. But what really did you feel like stood out, or what really helped you and continued to lead you on the journey of discovering?
Yeah, that one's a very easy question for me. And that was when I began to study more of one system, which I never really paid attention to in my career because I was in chiropractic and I was looking at pain. So I was looking at the nervous system or the musculoskeletal system. I never paid any attention to the immune system. Then I began to focus on that because when I had so much chronic inflammation and brain fog and infections in the body, all of my work on the musculoskeletal system and the nervous system were not working. Right. So I knew I had to go after a different system. And the one I wasn't looking at was the immune system. And now they call it the neuroimmune. So we know that the nervous system and the immune system work intricately with each other. They all do, right? But I'm like, okay, well, here's a path I haven't gone down before, and maybe I'll find my answer there. And I did, honestly. And then I started to look at different pieces of the immune system, and that's when I discovered what I firmly believe is my life calling, my purpose. And that was when I discovered the lymphatic system of the body, basically the sewage maintenance, detoxification, waste management system of your body that gets all the stuff you don't want in your body out of it, including your brain. And if you can't get the waste out of your body, you're going to stay sick, period. Like no negotiation whatsoever. And that is part of your immune system. So I had been struggling for years trying to get better from my condition. And when I came across the lymphatics and the immune system, and I began to work on that, I made more progress in 3 days than I made in 3 years.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, there's probably something to this then. And then I became a man obsessed with understanding how that system works, because very few people talk about it or know about it or have any clue what it does. And I just know for me, I was sick for 3 years and not a single provider talked to me about lymph. But I'm also a healthcare provider and I didn't know about it. So I want you to think about that. Like, this is my thing. And I had no idea. So I knew there's no way in the world an average person in the world who's suffering, nobody's going to tell them about it either if they didn't tell me. And that's when I started to focus everything I could on that system to look at it, because I was just blown away. Like that solidified for me what I'd always known, that if you give the body what it wants, it'll get better pretty damn quick. or it'll let you know you're on the right track. If you don't give it what it wants, it'll tell you that too, which means you're going to stay sick. So you're just not finding the right combination or the right sweet spot, that I call it, that you need to put together. But also, what you have to be careful of is that I've noticed that when people come across a system, they just do that system. But like, I'm going to be your brain guy. I'm going to be your gastrointestinal guy. I'll be your knee guy. Or, everybody wants to focus in on just one thing. And I noticed they did that with lymph too. So lymph was great, but then everybody just talked about lymph. And I wanted to try to educate people of, do you know how all these different systems have to work together and the role that one plays with the next? And if something happens to this one, this is what can happen to that one, like that way. I will say that the lymph is about as close as to the one thing that will help everything. Everything else that I've ever found is pretty damn close to being like the thing. But it's a box that I always go after and I always check on people, like my flight manifesto. When you come in to see me, and I want to make sure that it does work well. And if it does work well, then that's really awesome, because then I don't have to worry about it being part of the puzzle. But if it's not working well, you need to start to take care of that. Or what I'm trying to say here is that you're not going to be able to put together all the other pieces of your puzzle. Because I think the lymph system, when you put a puzzle piece together, where do you start with the puzzle? You start on the edges, right? You start on the corners.
Yeah.
In the middle. So for me, the lymph are your corners. I just got to get my baseline, and then I can work in from there. And then that was, when I first started doing that, close to 4, almost 5 years ago. And now I know from, because there's more research on about it now than there has been 4 years ago, of why it made such a difference for my brain fog and my brain inflammation and my chronic pain, because it's a huge factor in the ability for you to be able to drain toxins and inflammation from your brain.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you that, because I don't know that your timeline necessarily of when you started like learning different like systems or different components and putting them together, but you said you started studying brain science or pain science and like, the neurological aspect of pain. And there's a neurological aspect also of illness and dis-ease, because the brain is this power center that does send messages to every other system in the body. And, if it's dysregulated in some way, then it can downregulate your immune system, which then doesn't have the ability to fight off these toxins and things that are coming through us like it normally should. And so I was wondering what you see as like that correlation of how supporting your lymph while also supporting your brain can kind of help each other, because I know that the brain sends so many messages to all systems, but the lymph, I know from what I've been reading and learning from you, and then there's the lymphatic system, and the lymph is so intimately connected with our brain. And so, so my guess is the lymph is also conveying, in a sense, messages to the brain, or is it more just that it's helping drain and purify and cleanse the brain?
Great question. Well, there's always a two-way street, right? There's up, there's down, the way that works. And there's no doubt that the brain is important. Yeah. But let me give you an analogy that might help you understand my answer. So one of the things that I teach in my course with lymphatics is I make an analogy to an aquarium, a fish tank. So I call my program is called Body Aquarium Lymphatic Mojo. And I want you to think of a fish tank that you see that has fluid in it. Mm-hmm. And then inside the tank, you've got all the structures that are in there, right? Like your fish would be your cells, and right then you have all sorts of things in there like rocks, castles, whatever. Well, that's like your body. I mean, your body is mostly fluid, right? And everything lives inside of your skin, which could basically be the container of the tank. That makes sense? So everything in the tank is only going to thrive and survive as well as how you keep the water in the tank clean and purified and not of toxins and waste. That's why you have this filter system up in the corner and huge filters and lots of pipes and tubes underneath the tank that you don't see, because that moves the water, first of all, and then it makes sure there's oxygen in the water, and it gets rid of the waste so the tank looks beautiful. Well, if something happens with that filter system and you come back in a few days or a couple of weeks, the tank looks horrific. All the fluid in there is like green. It's toxic. There's algae. There's parasites, virus, fungus. Really poor supply of oxygen, because you see the fish in there, like their mouths are going really big because they can't get oxygen. And I equate that to your body and the brain. Your brain is also in the fish tank. So your brain is important, yes, but to me, your brain's not going to function only as well as how pure the fish tank is. So yes, the brain tells the immune system what to do, but the brain isn't going to function as well as it can if it's living in toxic waste. And when you have toxic waste, that's when the immune system kicks into play. So they have this interplay with each other, right? So I used to be a time when I thought the nervous system was the most important system in the body. The brain is for sure, but it's also part of your immune system because of how it reacts and communicates with the rest of the body. But they realize that you have a substantial amount of immune cells around and in your brain, right? They're called microglia, the small little things, and they're actually part of the immune system of your body. And you have lymphatics that are around the brain then have lymphatics that drain around the brain and then go down to the lymph in your neck. And then they go back to the lymphatic system. And they call the brain glymphatics from glial cells, glymphatics, which are cells in the brain that are not neurons. So I'm not talking about neurons. You've actually got more glial cells and microglial cells than you have neurons in your brain. So if you have an immune system issue, your brain's going to be on fire, and your neurons will be beholden to the other ones, to the immune system. And then that's where we have to look into toxicity issues, because I have a lot of people that are trying to recover from brain issues, and they're trying to do brain restoration drills or movement drills or things. All those things are beneficial. But if you're still living in toxicity, you're going to struggle with all of those, because you're not going to have enough for the brain to be able to breathe with the oxygen that it needs. You're not going to be able to have enough glucose delivery to the brain because of the toxicity in the body. And then if you got a toxic liver, you're going to have a toxic brain. Hard stop, period. No doubt, because of the ability for you to detox through the liver and get glucose up into the brain and throughout the body. So, you have the mind, body, mind, brain connection. They all have to work together. So when you work with the body below the neck, you have to work with the mind. But when you work with the mind, you also have to work with the rest of the body. You have to work with the rest of the body. So it's not just about doing, it's everything, right? So mental combined with movement, that's the kind of the sweet spot of bringing your body and your brain back from the state of inflammation or whatever that you're dealing with. And that's kind of my mission right now. And for me, what hit home with me, because I was doing all the neural stuff and I was doing all those things to try to bring my body back and things like that. But I was still hitting a wall because I wasn't able to help the lymphatic system and the immune system at the same time. So I teach that all of these things have to work together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like we were saying earlier, it's not just this one magic pill or one magic movement or one magic system or program. It's like we're too complex and everything about us is too integrated for it to be just like one focus in a sense.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, everything works together for sure. And the longer you do this, you'll find that where you need to focus on for someone depends on the person that you're working with.
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you need to go very, very individualistic with your rehabilitation program, because the the tissues that you're working on have stories to them, and it's the story of the human being that's carrying the tissue around. So you can't just go after tissues or structures or biomechanics or isolating things down to such a small microscopic level. Yeah, we need to do that to learn, but also when you put all those things back together again into a living, dynamic, breathing human being with a history and emotions, everything changes. Everything changes. Parts. First of all, there are no parts in the body anyway, because everything works as a ecosystem, as a functional unit. But even if we did have parts and you put them together, when you put parts together, they're no longer the same parts, because now they have to change the role that they're playing based on how they interact with all of the other parts
Yeah.
of the body.
Right.
And that's the difference between reductionist thinking and medicine as opposed to more holistic thinking. You need both.
Mm-hmm.
You need both.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so speaking of all of this, what do you think is the cause for the lymph to become stagnant, to not be working properly? Do you have any insight, like, or thoughts over the years of what kind of triggered that dysregulation in the lymph?
Yeah, it's being a human being on the earth does it. I'm joking, but I'm not
Yeah,
joking.
yeah.
So I get this question all the time, and it's a really great question. So the lymphatic system is a system that's designed to help you stay alive and remove toxins from the body. So viruses, parasites, fungus, cancer cells, metabolic waste, cellular waste, all those things. But so anything that goes into the body, it has to help get out of the body, right? And sometimes it's just so much overload to a system. If you think about now the world that we're living in, we're exposed to so many toxic substances physically and mentally. I mean, there's so much mental overload all the time that's just frying people's brains. But we're not meant as human beings to have to deal with all the stuff that it has. And the system just gets overwhelmed. And then incessant stress, mental stress, and physical stress and traumas. Anytime you have stress or trauma, you create tension in the body. And when you create tension in the body, you restrict fluid flow of all types, blood flow and lymphatic flow. So basically, you kind of get a blockage. And it's like blockage in your house, in your toilet. It just backs up. And that's actually what can happen for you. And then flushing the toilet no longer works. You have to go on there and plunge it out or snake the pipe to get it to go. And that's what happens for humans. And plus, it's not any system that anybody really has directly paid attention to taking care of, right? So a lot of it's just neglect. And I tell people, imagine how your teeth looked if nobody ever told you to brush your teeth. You're not going to have a nice mouth at all, right? And it's the same thing with lymph. One of the things that you can do for your lymph is actually brush your skin. So it's a good analogy with your teeth, that if you did some daily taking care of your lymphatics and get rid of some of those obstructions in there, you'd probably feel a lot better. And plus, it's your lifestyle habits and your choices and your behaviors that you have. I mean, everything that you stick inside of your mouth and you swallow affects your lymphatics, right? And then if you take a look around at what most humans eat, animals wouldn't eat that stuff, right? So
Yeah.
it bleeds out, and your immune system and your body is like, oh my god, they just keep throwing in this toxic food. We got to deal with it somehow, right? It does the best it can with what it's got in the moment, with where it is. But it can hit an overload point, and it tries to deal with that inflammation as it tries to deal with the toxins as best it can, and it does that through inflammation. So inflammation is actually a protective response, right? And so you have to figure out, okay, well, why is my body wrought with so much inflammation? And I'm finding that if you have chronic inflammation in your body of any type, the lymphatics are going to be playing some type of role in that. And especially in relationship to autoimmune disease, chronic pain, and neurodegenerative disorders in the brain. Because I got to a point with my brain where I literally was taking, I don't know, 14, 15 hours sleep, still being tired, napping all day long, and just no energy to do anything, right? And it was awful, and I couldn't think, I couldn't function, I couldn't remember names. I was fast track into Alzheimer's, no doubt. I was headed that way. And then when I started to clean my system, because that's the only variable thing that I did differently, my brain started to come back, and the things that I was doing to try to help myself worked even better. Right. So I use this phrase all the time, that you cannot get well in the same environment you became ill within. You cannot get well in the same environment you became ill within. And that's the external environment. It's your mental environment, but it's also the environment that your cells have to live in. So I tell people, if your brain is floating in cerebrospinal fluid that is full of excess protein called amyloid proteins and toxicity, you're going to struggle to get well no matter what you do, because you have cells that are living in debris. And you're supposed to eliminate about 3 pounds of toxic substances from the brain a year. 3 pounds.
Wow.
Now imagine if you only remove 2. Imagine if you only remove 2.5. I don't want a half pound of bad stuff circling in my brain, because that's going to make a difference on what? How well those neurons can connect, how well you can, quote, wire and fire, how well you can interpret sensory input, how well you can control motor output, how well your conscious mind and your subconscious mind works based on the environment that it lives in. That's why in my world, if you have brain issues, you have gut issues. You always have both together.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, are you the person who always says like the gut is a mini brain?
Yeah, so they call it the second brain, and I have some people that actually call it the first brain, because I think it's smarter than the one in your head, because most of your neurotransmitters come from your gut, not your brain. And if you think about that for a moment, that's quite fascinating, right? And so if you have a gut that is absolutely trashed from stress, anxiety, inflammation, toxic food, then you're going to affect the neurotransmitters in your body and your ability to absorb nutrients into the system and also get rid of waste. And then it's going to make its way and affect the brain. So they're finding now with the Parkinson's research that Parkinson's starts in the gut years before it ever manifests in the brain. And so you can extrapolate that to other neurodegenerative disorders. And there's no accident that the majority of your lymphatic system is located in your gut.
The majority is in the gut?
Yeah, the majority of your lymph resides in your small intestines, because if anything breaks through the lining of your intestines, the lymphatic system is there to kill it.
Oh, I totally thought the majority was up here in like our brain, face, and neck.
There's a lot there, but the majority is down below. So you've got about, depends on the size of the person and the research that you look at, but you've got anywhere between 400 to 600 lymph nodes in the body. And a lymph node is like a small miniature kidney that basically takes in toxins, and then your immune system comes in and kills it with all the good things that your immune system has and tries to get it out of your system. That's why you'll get swollen under your neck or in your armpit or in your groin or whatever. And, whenever you get like an immunization in your arm, your lymph nodes in your armpit will swell up because they're trying to kill all the outside stuff coming on in there. So you got about 400 to 600, and 1/3 of that number is from the neck up. So you have a significant amount in your head and your neck. But the majority, the remaining ones, a huge amount of those are going to be in your abdomen. So it's called GALT, gut-associated lymphoid tissue, GALT, or they call them Peyer's patches. They're kind of milky white in the gut, and they're your first line of defense for your immune system. And it just so happens that they have found that 70 to 80% of your immune system strength resides in your gut.
Wow.
So if you have an immune system problem, then you're going to have an inflammation problem. And if you have an inflammation problem, you're going to have a brain problem. So if you want to go after the inflammation problem, you have to go after the lymph, and you have to go after the gut. So that's why I always tell everybody, people say, Doc, who has a gut problem? My answer is everybody. They just don't know it yet. It just depends on to what extent, right? Now, here's the thing that I found. I knew that. And when I started to go after my gut, I began to feel a little bit better even before I discovered lymph. So I have a lot of people that are on gut restoration programs, and they're on programs to help heal the brain, but they hit a wall. They can't get any further. And I found the reason for me, and why I like how neuroscience is going with this, is because they still had toxicity in the lymphatics in the body. Because it's very important that you understand this mechanism. That if I have time to explain it, are we okay on time?
Oh yeah, we're great.
So I had a quote that I read years ago that changed my life. And it's a guy named Jerry Tennant who was on my podcast. And he said this: chronic disease occurs when you lose the ability to make new cells that work. Chronic disease occurs when you lose the ability to make new cells that work. And that's a whole heap of common sense, right? Because if you could make new cells that work, you wouldn't stay sick, right? So then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what's step 2? Then you have to ask, what do you need to make a new cell that works? Well, you need a lot of stuff, but I like to make things simple. It's 2 basic fundamental processes. 1, a cell needs nutrients. Agreed? So what are some big nutrients? Oxygen is a big one, right? Glucose is a pretty big one as well. Oxygen and glucose and your nutrients from food that you eat. Those are big ones. If you're missing those, you're in big trouble. So it needs nutrients. And most people actually aren't getting enough oxygen, and they're getting too much glucose, and their other macronutrients are horrific. And then once your cells use the nutrients, they're going to make waste. It's called metabolic waste and cellular waste. And then that's toxicity. So you need to get rid of that stuff. So to break it down, you need groceries in, so cells can get nutrients to do what they need to do. Then the cells will, I always use the analogy of the bathroom. The cells are going to poop just like you do, right? And you need to get waste out. So garbage out. Groceries in, garbage out. Simple. And what I found is that everybody's busy putting groceries in, right? Changing up my diet, changing my breathing, changing all these things to go into the body. And I'm like, that's great, but you got to clean out what's there first, because you got to get the waste out, because it's so overloaded and so toxic that it can't get out on its own. You got to go in there and you got to plunge your toilet. You got to get it out first. Then you put the nutrients in. So it's a critical step for healing. It's not so matter what you do, it's when you do it that matters. You follow? Mm-hmm. Like if you don't get the toxins out first, you can't get the nutrients in. You have to have one before the other, right? So the brain has a decision to make. It's like, okay, am I going to hold on to these toxins and not release them? Because if I release them all at once, you're going to die really fast, man, and you're not going to be in a good spot. Or so I let these toxins out so I can absorb the nutrients, or do I hold on to these and then let the nutrients just pass? So it has a decision. And the decision is to do what it can to keep you alive. Happiness and joy and no pain has nothing to do with it. Perry, awesome. You're going to feel like crap today, but guess what, buddy? You're not going to be dead. Thumbs up. I did a good job today, right? And that's all it's designed to do. So what I want to do is I want to help that process. So my mission right now is to help that process, because the human body already knows what it needs to do to heal itself if you give it what it needs to heal itself. And you just get out of its way. So my job now is to try to find out where those blockages might be for the body to be able to accomplish that. And I'm going to tell you from my experience and my work, if you're surrounded in toxins in the body because they can't get out, I don't care what you put into it. It's not going to have the effect that you want, because it physiologically cannot and will not allow you to. Does that make sense?
Total sense.
So that's a really big thing. I want everybody to just stop for a minute and listen. And it seems so simple, but that's one of the reasons why it gets overlooked a lot, because it's the switching of that order and then that focus. So for me, I always have a saying where we do lymphatics first before everything, right? Yeah. Because if the lymphatics are working great, I'm going to keep them working great. And if they're not working great, I'm going to work on them to try to get them back as good as we can get them. Right? And then what's showing right now is, I got to tell you, within the last 5 years alone, there's been an explosion in people talking about lymph and looking at lymph. I'm trying to do my part with it, of course, but because they're seeing that it plays such a valuable role in things, especially in relationship to the brain, because it was only until 10 years ago about that they didn't think that you had they thought the brain was an immune privileged organ with a blood-brain barrier. And they know that that's not true too. Your blood-brain barrier leaks all the time, just like your gut. That if your gut leaks, your blood-brain barrier is going to leak. And you're very vulnerable in there. And that they didn't think that you had a lymphatic system in your brain at all. And then it comes to find that they were completely wrong, that you do. But they discovered that back in the 1800s. There was an Italian anatomist who found lymph in the brain. It just got ignored, or people vilified him and said he was nuts, which very often happens in medicine when you come across something new or a new paradigm. And then now it's starting to make its way through, because they have the technology to be able to see things now, right? Because in medicine, if you can't see it, it doesn't exist, which goes completely against the most powerful law in the universe, which is quantum physics. You're not going to see a lot of the stuff that drives your behavior. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And so here's the thing. It's been there the whole time. We just didn't see it, right? And they're like, oops-a-daisy, there it was. That's big. Right? That's really, really big. And what I'm finding in my work is that you can't just drain the brain lymph. There's no such thing as, we thought it was privileged, right? Like that it just stopped from the neck and didn't go up, which if you think about it, ridiculous. But now that we know that you have it in your head and your neck and your brain, then how well that part functions depends on how well the rest of you functions. So that's what I'm trying to tell people, is that even if you do brain drainage of the head and the neck, it's not going to work if you can't drain in your gut either, because they both have to work with each other. That's based on pressure and communication of fluid flow. So that's why you have to look at the whole system.
That was actually pertinent to a question I was actually going to ask you too, which is when we're working with our lymph, do we actually need to do the full lymph massage to benefit? Or I was going to ask you, is doing partial massage good? Is it like I need to start and work all of the major lymph, or is it more just finding the tender spots where you think there could be a blockage and work that? Or, what do you think about that?
That's a great question. So I tell everybody that I don't do isolated lymph work anymore. I do the whole system when I can, right? Or at least once you need to do it. And you have to do them in a certain order if you're going to get the right results, because it just drains based on pressure dynamics. of the body. And if you just indiscriminately start rubbing places, you're not going to really get the same results, because you can drive one blockage into another blockage as it goes through. And you just got to think of lymph as like water flowing anywhere in nature. It needs to be free of blockages and obstacles. And if you hit a blockage one way, it'll try to find another way out. But if I clear one block, I can't have another block later down on the stream, or it's going to get stuck again. So say, for instance, a lot of times people would have swelling and inflammation maybe around let's give you a right knee, right? And you have to remember that inflammation is an immune system response. Mm-hmm. It's not a musculoskeletal response. The immune system comes into play to deliver inflammation, which is, it should, because that's healing. And why does it deliver inflammation? Because the immune system comes on in to kill anything that might have gotten in there. And it wants to bring a lot of blood flow in and nutrients, and also try to open things up so waste can get out, right? So that's why you never want to put ice on something. You're going to shut that process right down. Mm-hmm. So you constrict everything. So you'll feel good when you put it on, but you'll usually feel worse later. So I don't put ice on injuries. So you're going to have the inflammation in there, but your body's doing exactly what it needs to do when you're injured. Let's go back to what I said before. If I injure my knee, I'm going to have toxins there, right? Then they have to get out. And then where they have to go is through the lymphatic system and through your veins. And their ultimate target, by the way, is the bottom of the neck. So they drain to the veins at the collarbone.
Yeah, right here. Well, yeah. People can't see what I'm pointing at, but yeah.
And while they're getting that stuff out, your body's trying to get nutrients in so it can heal stuff and kill stuff. And you need to have both, right? But the swelling behind the knee has to go all the way up that leg. It's got to go through your pelvis, through your abdomen, up your spine to the neck. And what if you're stuck in your abdomen, or you're stuck behind the knee where the lymph is going to drain, or you're stuck in the groin, the crease of your groin? Then all that swelling is going to backflow or get stuck, and it's going to linger there. And then you're going to start to build up your toxic fish tank. It's going to happen. It's going to delay your healing process. So for me, I would never isolate your knee, because I know that if I put anything on the knee to drive out swelling, I'm always thinking to myself, what if Perry is stuck in his gut? I'm going to hit a block. So what you have to do is you have to clear the major areas where there's going to be a block, and that's where the lymph nodes are. So once you get the system, and you can get the system cleared, if you need to, you can focus on an isolated region. But the body, there's no such thing as an isolated injury in the body. That doesn't exist, right? And people also need to understand is that you're only as strong and resilient as the lymph node region that has the most vulnerability to it. And a lot of times, if you have chronic swelling in a region, let's say like your knee or your ankle, which people get a lot because when you stand up, you have to fight gravity of the fluids to go up. So that's why the ankles swell a lot. You would expect that maybe the biggest problem with your lymph node would be on the side where the leg is swollen, or if it's in the knee or the ankle, it would be close to that. And it might be. But you can also have a problem with the lymph node on the other side of the body, or higher up, nowhere near where the swelling is. But that can be the reason why the swelling won't go away in your ankle.
Right.
Because they all work based on pressure differentials. So the body has to react and change based on the inability for fluids to flow in or fluids to flow out. So pressure forces movement, which is a really good way to think about it. So one of the reasons that you move is to move fluid. The primary reason that you breathe is, yes, to get oxygen, but it's to move fluids in the body. And your heart has to beat to move fluids in the body. But think about pressure, which will cause you to shift or move to avoid pressure. If you sit in a chair for an extended period of time and you get pressure on a region, what do you naturally do without even thinking about it? You shift, right? Because you're starting to feel pain or discomfort. And one of the reasons you'll feel that is because pressure will drive fluid out of a region. But so your body has to compensate and adapt and move around that pressure. So it adapts to that. And that's the same thing it's got to do if you have pressure in a node. It's like, okay, it's like Perry's been sitting in a chair too long here and I got pressure behind the node. We have to shift and we have to move and we have to compensate and we have to adapt. And then the body could do anything that it wants to try to relieve pressure off that one. It could say, okay, well, Perry's got a little bit of a lymph node stuck behind his right knee. I have a novel idea. Let's hike up his left hip and let's twist his left shoulder out. That'll take a little pressure off something so we can get something to flow a little bit better to make up for it. And then the musculoskeletal system adapts to try to alleviate some of the pressure.
Wow.
And then what I found is that eventually if you hike up your hip, it's going to hurt. If you turn your shoulder around a lot all day long, it's going to hurt. Right. And then that's where you come on in and that's where you you say it hurts right here on my shoulder, or hurts my hip. And then people go after the hip, and you should, right? But I'm going to go and I'm going to check all those lymph nodes. And I better not find any of them that hurt. Because if I find any of them that hurt, I know one thing. You've got a pressure buildup there. You can't remove toxins, and you got poor vascularization and blood flow, which is affecting how your whole body moves.
Yeah.
Whole body moves. How your brain functions with and tells that leg what to do and not to do, all those sorts of things. That makes sense.
Totally.
So for me, it's more about the flow of fluid. Why am I concerned about fluid so much? Well, because that's the only way you're going to get nutrients in and toxins out. Right? So I really don't work muscles to work muscles. Anytime you work muscles, you're working the brain anyway, right? Because muscles are stupid. They only do what the brain tells them to do. But I'm working muscles to influence the ability for fluids to drain. Because I'm also thinking, well, maybe that muscle hurts because it hasn't been able to get fluid for a long period of time. And that maybe it can't get the fluid right there because it's stuck somewhere else in the body. So then that's where we do just like a full assessment to see if they're good. And if they are good, that's wonderful. That's what I want. And then I can move to another possible cause of why you're having the issues that you're having. But I can tell you in my experience over these last 5 years, if somebody has a chronic pain problem or an autoimmune problem or a neurodegenerative issue with the brain, you're going to have an immune system tied to that in some way, shape, or form. And then the lymphatic system is usually going to be a player.
Yeah.
He's going to be a player.
So for people who are like super interested in everything we're talking about right now, and it's all new to them, and they're wanting to assess their lymph or they have questions like, how can I do this on my own? Would you still recommend for them to start with your Lymph Mojo that you have on Vimeo?
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to do it, because here's what I found when I started to look at lymphatics is, one, there wasn't a lot of information out there on it. And then two, there was no resource really for people to just start to learn about it or do it for themselves, right? Because you can easily do self-help lymphatic techniques like you would do any type of technique. Sometimes you need to go deeper and see a specialist, but you can at least start with the basics and the fundamentals of educating yourself about what it is, why it matters, and hopefully we've done a little bit of that today. And then simple techniques that you can try. So that's why I said, you know what, there's really nothing out there. I'm just going to do it myself. So I decided to create an online program that I launched a couple of years ago, and the thing just exploded, took off because it's simple and anybody can do it, and people just started to feel so much better with the simple techniques. And I get messages every day from people telling me that I thank you very much. I can't believe it helped me so much. And then they say, I never saw this anywhere before, which is one of the reasons that I put it out there. And they can get that from our website, stopchasingpain.com. And it's a 2-hour video that you can stream or you can download. It's up to you. And then you own it for life. And you can work through the program on your own, different ways to help the techniques. And then people ask me, do you have like more? And then, yeah, there's always more. But, we created a intensive workshop / webcast. With the pandemic, we stopped traveling to teach it, so we just do it online right now. And then we teach you all the fundamentals that are in that video, but then we go much deeper into information, but also teaching you how to work the deeper part of the lymphatics that are usually the issue. And we talk more about how to drain the toxins from the brain. So we teach that we teach that in the advanced course, because the basics course, that's too much for you. You won't be able to do that one.
Okay. So if you have somebody who does the Lymph Mojo and they've been working their lymph for a while, and then they still have, they still feel like there's work to be done, that's where they take that next step to the workshop.
Yeah. So you got 2 steps there that you can do. One, the basics and fundamentals will get everybody started, and you always want to start there regardless. Right? It's like learning to read. You don't start with Shakespeare. You start with ABCs, Sesame Street. And then you can move to the deeper lymphatics, and that's where you have more advanced techniques, and you can work the lymph that sits deeper in the body where most of the obstruction happens. But I have people, even when you go all of that way and it still is an issue, then you can go a step further where we know that it's not a lymphatic system problem anymore. It's ultimately an immune system problem, because then you have to ask yourself, why does the lymphatic system keep coming back as a problem? Because it's trying to protect you from something. So what's driving the immune system response, right? Then you have to say, okay, well, what is telling my lymphatics to go haywire? Sometimes the lymphatics go haywire just because they haven't been worked on. It's neglect. And then when you take care of them and they keep coming back, then stop blaming the lymph. Then you have to go deeper and look for an initial insult. And at that point, it could be something that's trauma-based, like emotion-based, or it could be an underlying stealth infection, like a pathogen, like a virus or a bacteria or a parasite that runs it.
Got it. Okay. But you have seen where like trauma or like excess stress or different emotional components could actually also trigger the dysregulation of the lymph as well. So if you keep working it and it keeps kind of dysregulating, then you're looking kind of beyond that.
Yeah. So you can have that too, because chronic stress tightens up tissue, and tight tissue doesn't accept fluid flow well. Right. And then that's why your nervous system comes into play too, because that's sympathetic dominant, fight, freeze, freak out, survival mode. So you can't relax, and you overbreathe, or you stop breathing, and you hyperventilate, and you have too much, you don't have enough carbon dioxide in the system. You can't absorb oxygen, and you're just always on. So adrenaline comes out, cortisol comes out, and then they break down tissues, and you get more susceptible to infections with your immune system because it weakens under stress.
Right.
So if you have chronic stress, that's a nervous system, right, which is sympathetic dominant, but then that turns into an immune system problem. But then it can go the other way. Maybe you have an immune system problem that kicked off the nervous system with the stress, right? Because if you've got an underlying virus or a pathogen or parasite, that's an incessant stress to the nervous system. And then it's always on. It's always trying to fight something like that way. So that's why you can't separate any system in the body. Right? This nervous system is important, yes, but your immune system, in my opinion, is just as important, if not more important than that way.
Yeah.
Because I chased after the immune system the nervous system for 25 years. And that's good, But within 3 days of going after my immune system, that boom.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to do now is just make people aware that they should be looking at both.
Yeah. So if you had somebody who you felt like was experiencing like they were in a sympathetic state, they were kind of stuck in this chronic fight or flight, they had a lot of trauma or emotional stuff that they haven't maybe necessarily completely dealt with, and then therefore they're having the lymph kind of keep getting dysregulated, are you going to tell them go deal with the emotions and then come back and address your lymph? Or are you going to say, hey, deal with both at the same time so that you're constantly supporting your systems?
Yeah, we do both. So, I mean, I know, because I'm not a trained psychotherapist or psychologist, but I do work with people from an emotional standpoint, because that's part of being a healthcare provider, is just listening and talking and providing support, or knowing enough to know that I need to send this person to a trained professional to do that. But sometimes they're already seeing them for a therapy, but they've moved beyond just talk therapy. They need intervention with the body and movement and sensory awareness. That has a lot to do with, somatic work with trauma that they're doing. And it's a mixture of both, right? It's really gonna depend on the individual, honestly. I try to do both at the same time, but what you'll find is that most people will store their tension and their trauma in the abdomen anyway. And so that's usually the place where they have the most shock and trauma and tension and inflammation and lymphatics that are backed up there. So when I start to pay attention to the abdomen, people can release a lot of that pent up tension.
Yeah.
Right? Because most people never have anybody do anything directly to their abdominal region, because they don't usually complain of physical pain there.
Until you touch it.
Yeah, or tightness. They don't usually complain of abdominal tightness. They'll have tightness in the shoulders or the hips or the back or the neck, and that's because that's the most distal point from the what they call punctum fixum, fixed point in the middle. That's the center of the compass, right? And so going in there can be quite an emotional thing for people. And yeah, because if you just think about it logically, when you're under a threatening situation, or a retreat situation, or a survival situation, the first instinct for the body is to avoid it, right? Like, run away if you can. So if you can run away, that's the smart play. Even trained fighters will tell you, try to avoid a fight, because you're probably going to get hurt in a fight even when you know what to do. So just run away. Smart play. If you can't run away, then you can stay and fight. And if you know how to fight, you usually stand a much better chance, because your brain has neuroplasticity on what to do and anticipate, and you don't get so caught up with your emotions and hyperventilating that you can't think anymore. So that's why fighters fight. And if you can't do that, or if you can't fight, or you do start to fight and you're losing the fight and you can't run, then your first instinct is to curl up into a tight ball to protect yourself, so they can't hit vital parts of your body. So we know that is a safety. That's the reflexive safety position. Just think about anybody who's had a significant trauma in their life, and it's gut-wrenching. Maybe you lost someone you cared about, or you're under so much trauma. You just want to curl up into a ball and cry.
Yeah.
Right? I just want you to think about that for a moment. When you curl up like that, where's most of the tension go?
In the abdomen, the core.
Of course it does. That's the center point. So that's the curling point of trauma. So that's the reason it can get stored there. Not to mention there's there's a hub of nerves there like crazy that coincide in that region. And so you protect yourself by curling in. That's why it's the most vulnerable part of your body, is the center of the abdomen, right? That's where you'll hide everything. So it's one of the reasons why it's also the last place that you'll feel pain,
Mm-hmm.
because the body does anything and everything it can to protect it from experiencing pain. So what it does is it gives you pain everywhere else.
Yeah.
So, and then think about it this way, which is a pretty cool one. Most people don't feel pain in the abdomen, but the place they feel it the most is the direct opposite.
They're back.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So I firmly believe, at least in my work, when I'm looking at emotions, that because there's a lot of people that think that back pain is mostly emotional anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That comes from the work of Dr. John Sarno,
Yep.
who created the tension myoneural syndrome. Excess tension tightens up muscles and nerves so they can't breathe and you have pain. That it's because of decreased blood flow. So I think that what happens is that the brain will choose to protect your abdomen, and it can send pain to your back all day long, right?
Yeah.
Because it's got to go somewhere. But it says, I always kind of talk like the brain, and I say the brain says, you know what, Perry, I know it's really going to be awful for me to hurt your back, and you can't move, and you got to be out of work, and life is awful. But trust me, if I hit you with this same pain in the abdomen, you won't even be close. Like, I'm going to take you right out, because abdominal pain is excruciating, right? And so it's more of a survival response. It says, okay, back, you're up. Here you go. You got to fall on the sword again for me. And it does, right? And then it's not always, because there's not always an emotional component to the cause of pain. There's always an emotional component to some part of pain. That's why we're not rocks. So I'll usually go to the front, and then I'll eliminate that. And once again, you're right to the area where you have most of the lymphatics. And then when I tell people, when you have swelling and inflammation in your lower back, where do you think that swelling has to go? It's got to go to the front. So what if it's blocked in the front?
Right.
Well, then it's going to stay in the back, right? So that's why I always clear the front before you work the back. That's a central tenet in my world. I never do anything to treat the back of the body until I address the front first.
So smart too, because gosh, there's so many people that overly address the back, in so many ways. Even if you're just looking at generally when you go in to get a normal massage, they have you more than 3/4 of the time on your stomach, where they're working your back and upper back and neck muscles. And the funny thing is like everyone always has you doing everything where you're always stretching the back, but often with our posture, especially with like nowadays with phones and all that, we're actually already usually overstretched in that area.
Right. And when you think about that's a very good observation. And I want you to think about it just from a standpoint of where most people complain of physical pain. What parts usually hurt the most? The back of the head, the back of the neck, the middle of the shoulder blades, the bottom of the back, the hamstrings, the calves. Most people get stuff on the backhand side, right? And then they're busy trying to stretch and round the back, right? Like you said, but animals do the opposite. So animals do what they call pandiculation. That's where they contract the back and they stretch the front. So just watch a dog or a cat in the morning and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They inherently do the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're smarter than we are.
Yeah, in so many ways they are. In more ways than one.
What if you want to get some answers on how to get yourself well, you look at nature.
Yeah.
Because the further you get away from nature, the more lost you're going to get.
Yeah.
Because these are built-in circuitries of nature, because she never does anything without a reason. She's a smart cookie. She's not stupid. It's humans that are stupid. And then we overcomplicate everything. And if you just watch and you observe, you'll see a lot of stuff. That's why when I tell people, if you want to find some of the best movements to do to help your pain, is go down to the ground and move like you did when you were an infant or a baby, because those are fundamental patterns of building strength and movement and resiliency. And the brain will help you alleviate pain very quickly that way. So ground-based movement is my favorite form of movement to try to get yourself back from pain.
Yeah. Crawling, rocking, rolling, all that good stuff.
Yeah. And just think about it this way. I mean, how many times do adults do that?
Yeah.
And that's why adults are trashed.
Yeah.
And then that's why kids are trashed, because kids don't do it anymore.
Yeah, it's true.
We're too regimented and structured in all of these like magical forms and techniques with corrective exercise, because I don't believe in corrective exercise. I don't like the term. I just like human movement. Move more of yourself more often, more ways, more environments than you do now. And the first place you can go, that changing your environment is probably the best way to change pain, to put yourself in a place that you're not used to being, because that changes the brain. Because the brain likes novelty, it likes stimulation, it likes difference. The brain hates sameness. It likes difference.
Yeah.
And trust me, if you go down to the ground, the brain's going to say, holy cow, this is kind of cool. We haven't been here in about 30 years. This is nice, man. You remember how to roll left and right and rock, and you can crack a smile if you want to. It's okay. You can do that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then you feel a little bit better.
I teach a movement class every week for people who are recovering from chronic pain and illness, who are trying to create new neural pathways with movement, new positive pathways. And we spend a lot of time crawling, rocking, rolling. And we do it a lot of times laughing. We literally will like laugh and giggle together, because you're now creating this positive, giggling, laughing, smiling association with these really beautiful, brilliant, fundamental and developmental movements.
Yeah, well, it's like a form of play, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's play, and play is healing and magical in its own way.
It really is. And that's a big problem I have with medicine, because they take everything so serious.
Yeah.
And even if you go to rehab or you go through these things, it's such a, I don't know, it's so dry. It's no humor. It's all serious. And that's an environment that is fearful for a lot of people. And you want to try to make somebody feel safe when you're trying to get them out of pain. And if you put them into a very toxic kind of environment like that, of fear with the surroundings, or even fear that they're going to do your movement wrong, because here's the thing that people need to realize with movement is, I don't want you to get it right. And people say, what are you talking about? Well, because they know through neuroscience that the brain learns when you fail and you make mistakes, and not when you get it right. So it's not about doing the same movement over and over to get neuroplasticity. It's the exact opposite. You need to explore the fringes, the chaos and variations, and put your knee in the wrong place. There is no wrong place. It's just different places. You follow?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
You even have to watch your words. If I say the word wrong, that's wrong. That's my joke. Those things sit in.
Yeah.
They matter. It's not wrong. It's just a different thing. Because trust me, some point in your life, you're probably going to need to put your foot in the quote unquote wrong place.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's funny, because I know this has been my progression when I was starting as a coach, and I honestly believe what got me sick was being overly regimented, overly rigid. Everything needed to be so everything, my entire life, my diet, my disciplines, my exercise, my movement. And now I'm learning that that's what got me ill. I believe that. And so now it's like learning how to not undiscipline, and life is not designed to be regimented. Nature's not rigid. And yeah, if you always only move in really regimented ways, well, 90+% of acute injuries that happen in the body, it wasn't in this perfectly acute or this perfectly regimented movement. It was in those changing of directions, when your knee was internally rotated, or your hip was, and your knee's in, or you're in these awkward shapes. And so why not move in those capacities and in those dynamics all the time, and be stronger in that way?
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful. That's a perfect circle back to what we talked about before. Remember, I said that you've got chaos and you've got order.
Yeah.
So you can have so much chaos and movement that there's no control, and you can get hurt. But then you can have over here where you're too regimented for you, too much order. And then you can get hurt then too. You need to have an exploration with both, right? And when I put people down into positions, they're all like, doctor, should I have my pelvis which is your lower part of your body, should I have it into an anterior pelvic tilt or a posterior pelvic tilt? And I always say, yes. I want you to do the movement both ways and split it in between and go all over the place and just explore, because you'll find a place where you like it. And that's where I want you to start. And then I want you to start to venture into the part that made you feel more uncomfortable, not to hurt you, that made it feel you more uncomfortable. And then you can explore those ranges like that pendulum, right? And then you need to empower people so that they can move without you being there.
Totally.
So that's what a good coach does.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal of this podcast, is just to empower people to take healing in their own,
I think you're doing a great job for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I do want to get a chance to let you kind of share with everyone what you're kind of up to, because I know you have lots of different kinds of workshops, and you're launching a new one on the vagus nerve, which is a really important nerve to talk about in the healing chronic pain and illness community. So that's really exciting. Do you want to share a little bit about what you kind of got going on for people?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, I love to teach, honestly. I consider myself more of a teacher than anything else. And that's what the word doctor means anyway, actually, is teacher. I love to share information and things that have worked for me, and also things that didn't work for me. Right? That's some of your biggest learning comes from what doesn't work, honestly. So yeah, I have the lymphatic mojo body aquarium one that, is pretty much our flagship. We do a lot of that. And I have some movement-based courses as well, because I've been teaching ground-based movements for years. But we launched a new one actually just today, honestly. It's on the vagus nerve, and it's just to work a nerve in the body that comes from your brain and goes down to your gut. Imagine that. And that's the key. That's probably the most important nerve in the body, in my clinical opinion, in order to help bring people out of that chronic, incessant stress response and they call it a sickness behavior as well. And just techniques that I use with myself and with clients. And I tried to bring something different to it, because that's just how I think. And some people might be working with the vagus nerve, and you can do different things from, singing or cold showers or things like that. But I show people hands-on stuff, like things you can do that you might not be aware of how you can stimulate the body and the nervous system to affect that nerve. And it's just another piece of the puzzle that they might not have known they have access to. Because I found that a lot of people can read about things, but then they're like, okay, well, that's great, but what can I do with all that information you just showed me? I need like practical things to do. And so I said, well, let's put a one-day course together, and I'll give you guys a little bit of a peek inside my world of things that you can do. And got a whole list of them that you can choose from. And that launched today. That'll be a webcast as well. It's just virtually for now until we see where the world is going with travel and being able to go and learn in person. But yeah, that just launched as well on it. That's called vagus nerve mojo. And people always ask me why I use the word mojo, because they say, Doc, that's not a very serious word to use when you're in healthcare. And I know it's exactly why I'm using it, because I don't want to be in that kind of really stuffy world. And I read a quote once that said, there's zero correlation between appearing to be serious and actually being good at what you do. Because I have a lot of people that are really serious and they can't find their way out of a paper bag. So it's like you have to make it approachable and fun. And I chose the word mojo for a reason, because mojo means magic. And I think it's magical, the healing and what the body is capable of doing and what we're capable of doing, and the magic of how these techniques can work. And sometimes it's the magic of, I got no idea why they work so well. It's just crazy. But it also means voodoo, which I like, because sometimes there's just mystical things out there that we just don't know why stuff does what it does, and we might not ever know why it does what it does, and we need to be okay as humans with that. And that's why I chose the word mojo. And plus, the third reason is I love Austin Powers movies. That's
That's awesome. I think it suits you, just having followed you for so long. I think that you take a lot of stuff that, and it's like, I don't want to say the word serious, but it is stuff that can really, really seriously benefit people, and you do make it fun. And that's I think that has a huge, huge, huge element in why it does work. It's like the very fact that it is magical and playful and fun is the magic. It's like interconnected.
I agree 100%. I think fun, simple, basic, practical.
Mm-hmm.
Those are, like I said before, the solution doesn't have to be complicated to work at all. Right?
And I really love the workshops. I'm just going to let, for people listening, what you're doing is you're giving people tools to be able to do this themselves. You're not like saying, you need me forever, come see me 3 days a week. You're literally saying, I've learned through trial and error, and this is what I'm going to give you and teach you so that you can go and do this for yourself and or support others along their journey.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been my goal, is for you to not need me, to come on in. And my job is to try to figure it out so I can give you the tools to do that. But, then I also remember what I said before about, if I give you things that you can do to help yourself, I can't give you too many things to do either, because then most people will shut down or they won't do it. Right? It always comes back to that. And a lot of times we know what we should do, but we choose not to do it, even though we know that it's going to be good for us. Right? And small little things can make a huge difference. If we do something little every day, it's no longer little, because then it builds momentum, and then it becomes this very powerful thing that can change your life. And we call those habits.
Yeah, 100%. The domino effect. I say it every day. Like, it's the little things we do every day that yield the big results. It's not what you do once a month or once every week or once every 2 weeks. It's like, what are you doing? What is that little thing you do every day?
Right. Exactly. Agree 100%. Yeah.
And so, just like where you're at, and from all of your experience, everything you've been through with yourself, your own healing journey, everything that you've experienced in helping other people, if you had to sum up the most important message in your mind and your heart that you would want to share in the world of anyone out there listening who's in chronic pain or chronic illness or dis-ease, what advice would you give them?
Oh, that's an easy one, because it's something I've always tried to work towards, and I still struggle with every day, because it's not easy to do. And it's 3 words: be here now, which means try to be in the moment that you're in, because a beautiful thing happens when you're there. It's almost like this flow state where the rest of the world doesn't exist, and then you don't feel your pain. You don't feel your anxiety. You don't feel your stress. You're not thinking about the regrets of what you did a minute ago, and you're not stressed about changes that may or may not occur coming down the line, and you're not in that moment. It's not easy to do that. It's very difficult, honestly. And it's almost like the struggle to get to the top of the mountain where the master is sitting there and he gives you the answer and you're like, that's it? Yeah, that's actually it. But, it's taken him a decade of enlightenment to get there. But, decades and decades to get there. But it's hard for us because you'll reflexively go somewhere else or focus on something else. And they call that awareness and intention and movement. Like, if you're aware of your body, you have an intentional movement that you're focusing on. that can be one of the most powerful things, honestly, that you can do in relationship to healing from chronic pain, but changing your life. And you're probably going to tap into some mojo mystical stuff, honestly, when you can do that. And it's one of the reasons why I've been always fascinated with Eastern medicine and Eastern cultures. And what I love and respect about that culture so much is that they could be doing the smallest thing, but when they're doing it, they're nowhere else. They're right there. They're in that moment. It could be something of just, I don't want to use an example. I saw the movie with Tom Cruise called The Last Samurai, and that's something that he said he was just amazed at, that no matter what they're doing, whether they're weaving a basket or doing water, it's like that's the only thing that they're doing. Like they're just there, and it's such a sense of peacefulness. And I think that that's where we need to strive to be for ourselves and for the universe. And goodness gracious, I mean, if we could all get right there, I think the world would probably shift its energy quite nicely. Mm-hmm. Right?
I agree.
So there's my answer. Be here now.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. It's great. And, that goes totally with what we were just saying about small things every day. Is I think a lot of us can get caught up in thinking that means we have to have these amazing, epic, long meditation goals, when it's really just, can you just be here in this now, for this moment, this second, this 5 seconds, this 3 breaths, this, this pause throughout the day, over and over and over again.
That is actually a really wonderful point. That is your own form of meditation. When you can be in a moment and nowhere else, you reached your meditation moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You take the wins and you check the boxes when you can. Because that's another thing, that if I ask somebody that they're going to meditate for 5 minutes, they probably won't do it because it's too long. Mm-hmm. Right. So then they just don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I always try to set goals for people on here, like little weekly challenges. And I try to stick with, like, a lot of times we'll do 60 seconds a day, or even like it'll be 3 breaths, like 3 conscious breaths, or pause for 60 seconds and do this. Because I feel like that's like any one of us can do something for that, for 60 seconds.
Yeah. And when you do that, you build up a sense of empowerment and accomplishment. And then you're like, you know what? That was actually pretty easy, and I'm starting to feel a difference. I think maybe I want to try something else. And then that builds up. Like you said, it's the domino. And when you look at the dominoes, it's like if you flip a small domino in the beginning and you incrementally have one that's just a little bit bigger after that, you could drop a huge domino at the end. I mean, like, the momentum will just, I think they calculated it out that a first domino, a small one, you could drop one that's like the size of a house or something. I mean, it was just huge, the crazy amount of energy that builds up when you flip one domino and you put another one next to it that's incrementally bigger. Then the next thing you know, you can drop one that's massive.
I never knew that.
Yeah, so you don't put the same size domino. You put one that's just a little bit bigger. And then that first one knocks one down that's 20 feet high.
Wow. I've never heard that analogy. That's so cool. Well, I could probably just sit here and chat with you all day long. This has been it's been a long awaited conversation that I'm so grateful for. And I feel really blessed that I get to have this space to just share a little bit of, to allow you to share some of your wisdom with everyone listening, and hopefully introduce you to people, and just help expand their minds and their, ability to trust in infinite possibilities themselves. So thank you for being here with me and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your experiences with everyone.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and for everyone who's listening. Hopefully I, open up my brain. It can be a little scary in there sometimes. I have to live in there 24/7. Can you imagine that? It's really funny because I mean, there's so much in there that I want to say and stuff like that. And then I'm going, and then sometimes I'm like, I want to see this, and I'm going there, and it's just like, next thing you know, I'm like all over the place because I just love it so much. But I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and just share few things have been very influential for me in my life, and hopefully it will do the same for a couple people that are listening.
I can't imagine it wouldn't. It's been you've been a huge influence in mine. I consider you a little bit of a legend.
Well, thank you. That's so nice. Well, I'm striving to learn more, put out there all the time. And I just got to say, I love what you're doing, and then your energy and what you're doing to help others. So keep up with the great work.
Thank you. All right, friends, that is a wrap. How mind blown are you right now? This guy blows my mind every time I watch something new that he puts out, or just as you can tell, I'm like a super fan. So hopefully he's gaining a bunch of new super fans in this moment. I would encourage you guys to follow along with him on his Instagram, Stop Chasing Pain, where he's constantly dropping knowledge bombs and just wonderful tips and tricks for us every day. And you can also check out his website with the link in the show notes. If you have a story or a message that you feel called or inspired to share with listeners, please let's connect. You can reach out to me on Instagram at ourpoweriswithin, or directly email me, which is in the show notes. And P.S., do not forget to create mini moments of presence each day this week. And until next time, make this week great.